Hello, and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven VC podcast. I keep going to say good morning, but I cannot because I have Dr. Elena Itskovich from California, where it is 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday. So welcome to the show, Elena. How are you?
Hi, thanks. Happy to be here.
Thank you. I was going to keep calling you doctor, but if it's okay, I'll
Please
drop
don't.
doctor and call you Elena.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be a little, yeah, I'll keep it more informal. Elena, we're going to have a really fun, interesting chat today because what we're doing is, I feel like it's next gen for the VC space in terms of bridging that gap between scientists and, I guess, and investing in companies, etc. And you're the founding general partner of Nest Catalyst Ventures, which is a 6-month entrepreneurship program. There's more to it, and I'll let you explain that, that empowers life science scientists to become biotech founders through hands-on training, Silicon Valley roadshows, and investor access. You're a scientist turned investor. Absolutely love that. Such a great term. It's almost like I can see that on the roadshows as well, like just the way you know, Stanford postdoc, PhD in Cambridge. And Eleanor builds bridges between research and company creation, which I was saying to you pre-show, there seems like there's a bit of a gap there at the moment. It sounds like what I was trying to say at the start of this was that you're reshaping that and what that looks like in the VC space and what that looks like for scientists and biotech. And you focus on aligning with what truly drives customers, investors, and partners. Tell us a bit about how you came to, yes, scientist turned investor, start the company, and all of that.
Right. So I'm a scientist by training, and I've was volunteering for different organizations and building communities of scientists, and started sort of gradually grapple with what scientists do and what I think they should be doing more. The past 10, 15 years, there were a lot of technologies advanced in the biology space. We can read biology much better. We can write biology. We can really change a lot of things. And that's all new developments in the past decade or so. So those technologies unlock our way to work with biology that was never possible before. And you can see those sort of technologies turning into companies, but you see that very slowly because it needs sort of a lot of things need to come together so that technology can really become a company. Um, and I think what we're missing is the driving force for those companies and for those technologies to come into our reality.
Mm.
And I think what we need to unlock is scientist entrepreneurs. We sort of a lot of the for many years it was sort of separate. There were the academics left in academia,
That's right. Yeah.
and the sort of either very experienced biotech leaders or pharma companies that wanted to take that technology. So there was this gap, and you didn't see that sort of budding entrepreneurship the way you see it in all the other areas, especially in tech. And I think we need to see more of that if we want to see that influx of ideas
Mm.
coming together.
I love it. I love that the scientist meets like, like you say, like the company and, startups, etc. And, it's interesting that there is is divide the right word? But like there's academia here and then there's business over here and no real synergy right now. And so how did you see that gap? Where did you like what made you think, oh, we need to bring the two together? Like what was it?
Well, I was doing actually a podcast called Macademia, where we interviewed scientists and their career paths. And the idea of the podcast was just that we were working in our communities with postdocs, sort of people that come to train as their sort of last step before their independent career in academia. And we were interviewing scientists and listening to their career paths. And the podcast was very broad. You had scientists that founded a very successful bakery in France, and
Oh,
we had
wow.
someone that went to work to government, and someone that became teacher. So we really kept it very broad. But what I could see is that the sort of spaces that kept me the most interesting are the entrepreneurs. So there were a few scientists that became entrepreneurs either straight out of their PhD or postdoc, and started companies and really could build, using their skills and knowledge during their PhD or postdoc training, and actually come up with new technologies, new products, new markets, unlocked really big problems in our society. And I could see that people that either, building those companies or working for early stage biotech or investing in that space, they could see the impact of what they're doing and sort of, you know, you're related to academia. So it's like, versus, piling papers and sort of, a few people reading it and actually
Yes.
care, versus actual products that can help people in different ways, whether it's health or well-being or environment. So that really inspired me to think more about what needs to happen in the world so that we can see more of that happening, more science-driven companies. My husband is an entrepreneur in a very different space, but I could see his path. And at some point, I started to think, what would happen if we have more, money, more energy spun into scientist-driven companies or scientist-driven ideas versus another cyber company, which is needed, but maybe not in that scale of the number of companies. And I wanted to see more of those budding ideas. And you could see that because of those technologies I mentioned earlier, now you could innovate in biology the same way you innovate in tech. You need, the pre-seed, the seed
Yeah,
funding that you
absolutely.
need. You don't need the $100 million to start a company. You can start a company with, $500,000 to do some proof of concept. You can
Very
raise,
tight.
$2 million to make another inflection point. The ecosystem is changing. There are a lot of things that are happening that allow for scientists to actually become entrepreneurs, drive those companies, and really see more science coming
How
forward.
exciting! Because to be honest, like I loved the way you said the pile of paper, the research paper. Did you see the gap in terms of, no doubt you did, in terms of these scientists who have all these entrepreneurial ideas, but what do they do? And is that why you started almost like the entrepreneurship program? Like it's almost like the incubator to help them, like, well, to help bridge the gap from, for example, being a research to then being able to understand, all right, if I want to pursue business and move into business, or, and the commercialization realities of it all, you then
Right. So,
bridge the
no, go
gap. Is that right? No, sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, sort of. So when we started to think about it, I actually was working. I'm still working with her, with Natasha Streisand. She's a scientist herself, working at a pharma company, and was starting her own company in therapeutics and cancer therapeutics.
Mm.
And we also worked with another friend that was a scientist, still in academia, but with a lot of translational ideas. And we were sort of thinking together, what can really move the needle, right? Like if you have this idea, what is really preventing from you starting a company versus you being, working in Facebook for 5 years and starting a company out of there. So we sort of came to about three pillars that we think are really critical, and that's the gap that, as you said, we need to sort of help bridge. So one is business skills, right? Like
Mm.
you come out of academia, you didn't do market analysis, you didn't talk to lawyers,
No.
you know, you actually have a lot of skills that are required for founders. You've built teams, you've worked on
Yeah.
long-term projects, you fundraises. So there are a lot of qualities there you
Mm.
already have, but the business skills you're probably lacking or have some gaps. So that's why a lot of our program is to bring those experts to the program and have them teach. So, we bring IP lawyers. They cannot teach everything they need to know, but at least they give you the tools to start exploring it, understanding it, working with lawyers in order to develop your IP. We bring in people from the US healthcare system to talk about that and what do you need to know when you're starting to develop a product and what you need to think about. Um, Reimbursement. That's a huge subject that as a scientist, you're not exposed to it.
Yes.
So that business skills and understanding of the market you're building for, that was a big part of what we were building. The second one is the network. As I said, you didn't talk to lawyers. Maybe you know just a few founders that you sort of look up to. You've probably never talked to investors. There's a lot of people that are involved in building a company. And coming out of academia, most likely you weren't in touch with that ecosystem. So we're building those bridges for you, with you, when you participate in the program, both through people that come and give those workshops and lectures, both and also through sort of curated opportunities to meet advisors, to meet people from the ecosystem, so that you can just build faster. You don't need to build all those relationships from scratch. You're starting where we're starting. So
Wow.
that's the second
It's
one.
quite
Yeah.
incredible. It's quite incredible because it is such an interesting, like you started this from a podcast. So you saw an idea there. How did you work out personally yourself? Like you were a scientist, how did you train yourself to become an investor? Because you had to understand it yourself, right? You said your husband's an entrepreneur, so you probably have been exposed to a lot more than, say, people in academia and scientists are like, oh, I want to start a company or I want to do something. I want to go into business.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's all of those things. I didn't do MBA training, but I did talk to a lot of people and saw sort of, where they're succeeding, where they have challenges. I talk to investors and see sort of where they see the potential. I look at the market, and you mentioned sort of looking at what others care about. I listen to what others care about.
Mm.
What are the pharma companies are looking for? What are people that are excited about and when they're thinking about biology? And I slowly picked up on what others care about, and that helped us to shape what you're doing with the program, how we're investing and supporting in the companies that join us. I have to say, we're still building out the fund. That's an
Yeah.
ongoing process. That's the third pillar. We think funding is critical, and I think we need to find, more funding for early stage biotech companies. That's critical in order to move that whole ecosystem forward. Um, but I'm building that out myself as well. Sort of not everything is already set.
No, which is quite incredible because it's almost like it's healthcare and health tech is and with AI it's revolutionizing, but it feels like if like from a biotech perspective and anything bio health or tech related, it's fascinating because it's almost like it's a massive pool and it's water going everywhere, but it's also shaping into what's next in when it comes to VC, but also beyond VC, like you're back to this scientist bridging the gap with entrepreneurialism, and then how do you bring the two together to make even more impact in the world and solve, massive problems and like because that's what we're looking at, right? We're going to be solving problems at a rate of knots versus how we used to be able to. But
For
you
sure.
you can't
Yeah,
have this, you can't have the scientist over here and the business investing over here. The two have now got to come together. And it's
they
almost
come
like,
together.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
for
you're
sure. And
doing
I'm not the only one in the space, right?
no.
There are investors that gradually, either it's investors that come from the bottom, as I call it, like PhD scientists and
Mm.
sort of people that got training and got understanding of what's really needed. But also the big firms are realizing that biotech is growing, and you need to have more ability to support those companies. Even Jensen from NVIDIA, he's when they were building, and at first they started with designed the chips for graphic analysis. But when they actually started to understand that there's a much bigger potential here, is when they they noticed that scientists are using their technologies in order to do large data analysis, because scientists gather a lot of information that they want to analyze and decipher. And when they start to realize that they're supporting that research and innovation, they've built it out into that sort of leaning forward and into that. And I think that that's the future, right? Like biology, you talked about big problems. When we were starting to build Nest Catalyst, that was our hypothesis, right? Like scientists, they must be doing something important. And now that I know what they're doing, our first cohort, we have companies that are doing gene delivery platform. They're doing fighting antibiotic resistance. There's so many big
Wow.
problems
Yeah.
that you can't solve with a hackathon and some creativity. You need the research, deep skills and understanding of the back mechanisms in order to figure it out.
Yeah, wow. And so 6 months. So what is it? So you've got your three pillars. So is it like based off those three pillars that informs a 6 month program? Like in terms of how you structured it? Like yeah, it's like they come in, they're probably green, they're like, what, excited, but what is this? Like, I've got this vision of, the scientist, and then they're coming into the business world. Like, I know you said you bring in all the different external, disciplines and support, etc. But
Right.
is it like full time, a 6 month entrepreneurship program that they're involved in, or how does it work in that regard?
No, so the idea behind these 6 months is actually give them time to implement what they're learning. So we have about 4 or 5 hours of sort of online meetings that we have during the week where we bring in different advisors and mentors. But the idea is that the rest of the time they're already building those companies. They're just, you don't come and learn about entrepreneurship, you're actually building the companies and you're
Yeah.
getting advice as you go. So for example, we have a session about building your advisory team. So you're immediately there to think, okay, who can be a good advisor for your company? We have a session about IP strategy. So even if you're starting with an IP, what's going to be your next IP? What's going to be your IP moat? So the idea to spread the content over 6 months is that you actually have time to listen, to learn, to dive deeper into the areas that we touch upon, and implement it as you're building the company. So that's part of it. The other part is matching. So we're bringing a team of potential advisors that are interested, sort of come with a lot of experience from the industry and want to work with early stage founders. So they're available for our founders to consult with, maybe to onboard some of them as potential advisors to the companies. And we also have a matching mechanism where we invite people with experience to actually work for 1 week with our companies and see, define a project, have an opportunity to work together for a week, and then see what comes out of it. And from the first cohort, I can say that 1 week of intense interaction between two people can spring all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
some joined as co-founders, some joined as advisors, some joined as first employees. So it's a really intense and interesting interaction between the people. We don't say to them what has to come out of it. It's just an opportunity, a platform for them to connect. And it's up to them to take it forward. And the whole program is based on that. I think it's very challenging to be what they called an incubator or a VC studio, where the people that run it take very active part in building those companies. Unless you do it like one or, I don't know, three at a time. For me to build those, 10, 12 companies that join our cohort, that's not going to happen. It's going to be all on them. And we are only the facilitators. We're, thinking of the content, bringing the people, arranging for opportunities. We have events, we have all kinds of things going. You mentioned the roadshow, that's a really big part of it. But it's up to them to build those companies.
Yeah, I love that because it is up to them, right? And that kind of then you really get to see whether they've got what it takes. Like, because if you're doing it all for them, how are they going to? It's almost like, I hate to say it, a bit of sink and swim at times because honestly, the entrepreneurial journey is not easy. And
No.
they've come out of like, university or academia. They've been very, dare I say it, it's almost like, institutionalized in a way. Like anyone that comes out of corporate, you've almost been institutionalized, right? And then you throw yourself into entrepreneur and you're like, whoa, okay, here I go. What is this? And like you're juggling 50 million balls in one, like at a time. It's really about how it's a mental game. It's everything. It's not just, just being a matter expert or an expert matter. It's being able to see what they have in what it takes, whether they've got it. And so my next question is in terms of when you have, people that apply for obviously for the program. How do
Mhm.
you assess who is like, you said you had 10 to 12 in the first cohort. What sort of criteria do you have to assess whether they're should be part of the program or not?
Got it. So we had six teams in the first cohort. We looked to onboard about 10 to 12 companies in the new cohort. So we're sort of dividing it to three aspects. One is the founder. We're not interested in scientists that want to keep their academic job and sort of have someone to build their companies for them. We're looking for scientists that finished a PhD or finished a postdoc or working in a biotech company that now have understanding of a new technology and they want to understand what they want to build. So that's one thing, the person. And that person in actually in academia, I see a lot of similarities between what's a good scientist is and what a good entrepreneur is. Scientists need to structure a good story. They need to sell their technology, sort of science, and sort of get funding for what they're doing. They need to hire people or work with a
Mm,
team in order to make good discoveries. They need to plan ahead, right? Some of their research projects take 5 years, so they need to know what they're sort of building towards. So we look at their academic career, what they can tell us about their accomplishment, what kind of science they've done, which part did they play in it. So that's one aspect, the founder aspect. The second aspect is the technology. We're sort of a team of scientists. We have access to a lot of biotech experts. So, what is the technology? Did they develop it already? Do they know what it has potential to do? Are they thinking of developing a new technology and then like why do they think that it will work? And then what we're looking at is the market, sort of what kind of problem are they really solving, right? A lot of the times when there's a scientist thinking about taking a technology and creating a product out of it, then the question is, what is it going to do?
mm,
Right? Like what's the question? What's the market? Where's the actual need?
mm,
Um, and we're looking into that as well. Do we think the opportunity is big enough? Is it important enough? Is it really going to move the needle for some part of the market? It's important for us that they solve something that's needed. We sort of start with that idea because a lot of funding actually comes from grants. So someone thought the exploration of that field
mm.
is important. But then we're thinking, okay, wait, but does it really solve a problem that someone is willing to pay for it? So we're definitely looking into that as well. Sometimes we can come up with other applications to the same technology. So we can suggest that to our founders and see, are they flexible or are they sort of why do they think their idea of implementing that technology into that specific question or challenge is important. That's something we're also looking at.
Yeah, because that's fascinating. Because that was going to be one of my questions. Like, you were saying, is it solving a problem or a need? But then, like, given the world we're in and everything, there's so much complexity and everything's changing so rapidly. A problem being solved today may be a different problem that needs to be solved in a year's time. And when we talk about science and biotech and, all of that, like, there's just so many things that are going to be I'm sure cancer there'll be a solve for cancer way sooner than we've been. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many things that we're just like with the revolution that is taking place right now. You almost pray that there will be solves for some of these things. So it's like it's interesting that you're looking at what is it solving right now, but also then you're looking going, well, how do you adapt it? Could it spin out this way or could you look at it that way? Because you're probably seeing obviously there's more possibility to solve potentially bigger problems in terms of how you're looking at it. Is that kind of what you're when you're looking at the different ways that potentially they haven't seen yet to solve the problem?
I think just a lot of the times they come up with ideas that are really broad. So, for example, we had one applicant to our program that said, I can design proteins in any way I want. And then the possibilities are endless. If they come up with they have tools and knowledge of a specific technology. Then the question is, do I think that the idea that they've developed actually is interesting enough and big enough that it's worth pursuing that idea? Maybe I've, talked to other investors or to other, people in pharma that actually have a bigger or more challenging problem that they can solve with that technology. So then I was like, there's the option of saying, wait, like you have this amazing tool and technology. How about you talk to these people and see if there's a gap there that
As
maybe
well.
you
I
can
love it.
solve for.
Yeah.
So it's something we did a little bit in the first cohort. It's interesting to explore this cohort as well, and we'll see where it takes us.
Wow. I want to spin it. I want to pivot back to you, right? So when you booked in for the pod, I asked the question around you kind unique insider experience in life leadership or investing. And you said, understand what drives your customers, investors, partners, and build out your relationship from that perspective. I mean, it comes
Right.
back to this listening piece, please, doesn't it? But can you share a little bit on that, please?
Yeah, I find myself having a sort of similar conversation with people. And they usually revolve around those things. Because when we're building, we're not building in a void. And a lot of the times the people that we want to engage in some way, they have their own, aspirations, they have their own goals, they have their own perspective on things. And I think what we miss a lot of the times is that we're not going to change that. Oftentimes we don't have enough information or a reason to actually make someone change. So I'll give you a very simple example with investors. Investors, when they have a fund, they have a very specific investment strategy. They know which stage they're investing, what kind of field they're investing, what they're looking in founders, what they're looking in the company. If there's an AI fund that wants to invest in B2B SaaS, that's what they're going to invest in. And even if you come up with very amazing idea that addresses a big question and you're a strong founder, if you're talking to that investor to get an investment, it's not going to work. So
Mm,
if you understand that, you can take the conversation elsewhere, right? You can still get them excited, but when you understand that they're not going to do the investment, maybe they know someone else that's interested.
yeah.
Maybe they can give you a different perspective. But if you're just pushing into that direction of getting investment from that investor, from that fund, it's not going to work. And you're
No.
wasting your own time and you're wasting the other person's time and you're wasting that social capital that comes from understanding their needs.
Mm,
Similarly, with developing, let's say some kind of a technology that you believe will help, let's say, pharma companies identify the right targets for a specific disease. Maybe it's amazing and that's the right technology and that's exactly what they're looking for. But you will not find it out unless you go and talk to them and try to understand how their process looks like and where is there an opportunity for an outside vendor to come in and help them to decide on that strategy. Is it before they start R&D? Is it when they're um, taking a new technology and start to figure out what to do with it? Like, when will that fit? Because again, if they don't know at what stage your solution can sort of tap into their process and they don't have interest in someone that comes and solve that problem, if they're very happy with what they have and they actually are all focused on clinical development and they don't do R&D, and they just, get it from biotech, and they're just not interested in anyone to come up with a solution like that. Um, if you're going to have that conversation that doesn't make sense for them, it's not going to be useful for you as a founder, and it's not going to be useful for the pharma. But if you come prepared and you understand their process and you understand what they're looking for and what might interest them, then you can structure your story, you can structure the technology, you can structure the product, you can structure the conversation in a way that maybe they'll get excited. Maybe they'll give you a point of who else that you should talk to. Maybe they can share a program that might be relevant for you. But they'll only do that if it resonates with them.
Yeah.
So
No, no, keep going. Sorry.
yeah, no, I think so. That means that for every conversation that you approach, you need to understand at least a little bit about where they're coming from. Don't start pitching them, whether it's investors or collaborators or customers. Try to understand where they're coming from, whether it's by researching in advance of that
Mm,
conversation,
about to say that.
whether it's by asking questions and being curious about their process. But you have to understand what they're interested in order to guide that conversation. So for
Love
example,
it.
I'll just say that I usually start the conversation by asking the other person to introduce themselves. Because if I start to introduce myself and talk about what interests me, it's not going to end. And I prefer
No.
to know what the other person is doing, what they care about, so that I can tailor my story in a way that resonates with them.
I love it. It's funny. You were talking about research, you were talking about curiosity. It's so important. The thing also that comes up for me, it's almost like speed dating, right? Like, not that I've ever been a speed dater as such, but it is really to get their fresh perspective, and to show that you're actively listening. A good one that I've always used is, and my team used to think I was crazy when I just started to, when we were pitching or, we had new business meetings and I'd be like, we're going to do some speed dating. They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, we're going to start the session with understanding a bit about the client. Like we'd done our research and everything, but we hadn't met them, so to speak. So it was literally understanding something personal about them and then what they loved in terms of their profession. And
Mhm.
it just lightened everything up. And then it showed that you were interested, but then also helped shape because we tailored these speed dating questions to show that we understood about their business, but then wanted to get their spin on it as well. And so I think it comes down to that as well. It's the ability to, it's understanding them professionally, but I'm a massive believer in how about understanding them from a personal side as well, like what makes them tick to
Yeah.
get to be able, but there's nuances, right? There's always nuances. You've got nuances, I've got nuances. It's all down to that. And so by better understanding that, there's potentially then better collaboration, connection. And that's what's so important in any form of a partnership, in any business, isn't it? Like, especially when it comes to looking for investing, etc. It cannot be a transactional relationship. I think that's what we're getting at here.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's important on both fronts, right? It's
Mm,
also for the business
yeah,
transaction to make sense. You need a business sort of rationale for it,
100%.
but also for the people to connect and to relate. Um, and I think also, it's okay if you manage to build that rapport quickly with someone, or maybe it's going to take you time, or maybe it's just
Mm,
that's not the right fit for you, and you know that after that conversation you're never going to speak again because you don't feel that connection. You don't feel like they're listening or understand what they're saying. So it's okay to sort of follow your gut instinct, but at least be there ready to hear and to
100%.
understand what they're talking about, and see if that resonates with you as well, right? It's not just you
Yeah, it's not
trying to
one
please
way.
the
No.
other. Is
Yeah.
is you also trying to understand if the other person is resonates with you as well?
Yeah. I've got two more questions for you. You're an entrepreneur yourself. You're a scientist, doctor, that's kind of coming in, you're reshaping what VC looks like in particular from a biotech perspective. Do you ever have your moments where you're just like, I don't know what's next, or like, do you ever have your own moments? Because here we are. You've got this entrepreneurial program, but it's not an easy road. Entrepreneurialism, like no day is the same. So
Yeah.
how do you also check yourself? How do you also make sure you're okay that, when you have your moments and your days, because it's all good and well when we get on and we get up and we advise, we coach, we talk to our, the program or our clients. But we also have
Hmm.
our moments when we go home just going,
Oh
oh
yeah.
gosh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I had this happen to me yesterday, and then bang, all of a sudden I had a win and I'm like, oh, okay, today's all right. I've survived another day. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know completely what you mean. It's actually funny because when we had the pitch event for the first cohort, I was talking to the audience and I wanted to say that, the whole program is based on a lot of people's interest in supporting early stage founders, um, specifically in life science. And I think, and that's why we could do this program because we needed that collective strength. And I said, I'm not an entrepreneur myself, so I cannot teach them to do biotech. And then all of my cohort came to me afterwards and was like, what do you mean you're not an entrepreneur yourself? You're 100% entrepreneur. Maybe you didn't build a biotech company, but you're definitely building this thing, this Nest Catalyst. So I definitely have a lot of those point moments. Actually, the first cohort was actually targeted towards Israeli life science scientists that were based either here in the US or elsewhere. And for a lot of time, I was building. So we had a first successful cohort. I was building the fund, and I was struggling. Honestly, I didn't manage to raise the fund. It was really hard to to make that sort of idea come across. So we had quite a rough time. And to me, it was always the question of, do I want to do this or can I imagine myself doing something else? Right? Because there's always a trade-off and you can always choose to do something else. You can find a job, You can build something else. You can take a time off and enjoy the little kids. There's always an opportunity. And for me, is sort of as long as I still choose to do this, then I'm moving forward because the
I
impact
love that.
in my mind is so big. And I know that I'm in this intersection of business and science and community in a way that not many others are.
Yeah.
Um, so as long as I'm happy with doing this, even if it's hard, then I'm sticking to it.
Oh,
So
I love it, Elena. Elena, sorry. It's yeah, it's a good one. Like, yeah, it's just like what I think. I'm like, this is it. I'm doing this. There's no other choice. Like, this is I'm sticking to it. It's amazing. So then what would be one piece of advice for, especially in your field, that you would give someone that was wanting to pursue, starting their own company for, being an entrepreneur, but they weren't sure what steps to take or what would be one piece of advice, like, someone from academia in biotech, what would be your advice to them?
right. So my advice, talk to people. Really try to figure out what are you doing and can others are others interested. So I actually have a short article on LinkedIn that we call it, I don't even remember, but Entrepreneurship 101 for scientists, where I had many of those conversations with people that have some kind of a technology they're thinking about. They feel like they have something interesting in their hand and they're thinking, is it worth to start a company on? Um, in one of our recent events, I asked our founders, why shouldn't you start a company? And the reasons are so many. Like it's hard, it's long,
Maybe
it's financially not stable. There's so many reasons why not to start a company. And you need to make sure that if you're building this, if you're going to put an effort, you're not going to figure out within, 3 weeks if it's worth it. It's going to take much longer, especially in science. So you need to really talk to people, talk to potential customers, talk to potential investors, talk to potential co-founders or, early employees, and figure out if it's worth it, if it's worth your time to dedicate your time, your, undivided attention for 7 years to really build this. Is the impact is going to be big enough? Are you going to be comfortable being a founder? Talk to other people so that you understand both how entrepreneurial life looks like, and whether the product or the opportunity you want to develop is really worth your 7 years of your life.
yeah,
Um, and if you
incredible.
come up with a yes, um, then you need to figure out how you're going to sponsor that because it takes time and money to build
And
in biotech
patience,
and patience.
patience and being present as well.
Yeah.
Eleanor, I could keep talking to you, and I'd like to get you back on the show in a year's time, because I see that and Nest Catalyst will continue to be outside. The names that I love the
Thank
name.
you.
Catalyzing Event VC. It's amazing and fascinating. And that article, I will make sure I share that as well. So, how do we find out more
Thank
about
you.
you? How do we find out more about Nest Catalyst?
So we have a website. We actually applications are open for our next cohort. You can definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm always happy to talk with budding founders for sure.
I think everyone should be reaching out to talk to you about getting moving into the entrepreneurial space. It's been such a pleasure talking with you, Eleanor. I've really thoroughly enjoyed you talking and listening to, how we and also seeing how you're reshaping the biotech and VC. So look out world is all I'll say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. It was fun.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.